you are, because it is Morning Somewhere. November 5th, 2024. My name is Bernie Burns, sitting right over there. She's just asking for your financial support once again. It's Ashley Burns. Say hi to Ashley, everybody.
I'm not gonna lie. The calm and measured intro threw me a little bit, Bernie.
Well, today.
It's not
Today's a big day.
Calm and measured is not something I generally associate with you.
So today's election day in the U.S. So we actually have a special plan for today. Today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about some current events and things like that. And then Ashley and I, we're going to do an extra long podcast today where we're just going to kind of sit and chat for a while. Today will be a longer, definitely different episode of Morning Somewhere. Less structured, I'll say. If you're a member of our Patreon, it'll sound a little bit more like our Saturday chats that we do sometimes.
Yeah, so here's the idea. The idea is today is election day. In the U.S., that can sometimes mean a lot of long lines, people waiting there to practice democracy.
Right.
And we're going to be there to keep you company. We don't have any blistering commentary to offer, but what we can do is offer our company.
Right. While you're waiting in line, if it's a long line, we want to do whatever we can to encourage people to go out and vote today. So that what can we do? Well, we can make, a nice distraction while you're in line and make that time in line seem a little less long. And in fact, I reached out to some of the other former Rooster Teeth crew who have their own podcasts, and I think that Stinky Dragon's going to be doing a similar thing today, releasing a piece of content. And that Regulation, they're on daily content at this point, so they already had something planned to do for today already, and they'll move ahead with their regular release, I think.
So all of us are going to be here to make sure that you stay entertained while you're waiting to vote.
Least that we can do, I think, because really, there's so much contentious discussion about politics in the U.S. We've talked about it ad nauseum on this podcast. But one of the dirty secrets of the American political system is it's not really about who votes for who. It's really about who votes. Because, Ashley, what would you guess was the highest voter turnout by voting age population? What percentage of the voting age population would you think is the highest we ever had in the U.S. since 1944?
I'm going to be optimistic and say 60%.
You're very, very close. And it was 2020. We matched the 1960 total of 62.8% of eligible voters, or I should say voting age voters, went out and voted in the big election. And this is the presidential one. The one that happens in the off years.
Yeah, every 2 years there's like an off cycle election, and that's a terrible turnout.
I think so.
I assume that's like 20%.
Yeah, or sub in a lot of cases. Yeah,
it's interesting too. A lot of people around the world look at turnouts like that 60%, and they're like, "What are you people on?" Because a lot of places have mandatory voting. When I was in Australia, there was mandatory voting. And it was a whole thing. Employers have to offer the time off work. They had here's the best part. Here's why you go vote. You get a hot dog.
You get a hot dog when you go vote?
You get a hot dog. You go vote, get a hot dog.
Well, even in Austin, there was this long list of things that were freebies if you went and did early voting. And
right, you could turn in your voting sticker and get soup or a pastry or something like that. You get a thing if you turn in your little voting sticker, basically prove that you voted, and then you can get a little perk.
It's interesting that you brought up the soup thing. It's funny too because I've got my Joe's coffee mug. If you ever seen photos from Austin where people stand in front of the "I love you very much" wall, that's my coffee mug that I drink. All my coffee mugs here are Austin related.
First of all, Bernie, I need you to get it right. I think it's "I love you so much."
I love you so much.
It's the green wall with the pink graffiti. I believe it featured in the Austin food tour video that you put together before.
Yeah, that's
RTX.
how people know it for sure.
Yes, that's how it got around. That's its initial claim to fame.
See what I did there, Ashley? I was passive aggressive. I was pretending like I didn't know what it said, so that I'm above that. I don't go and take selfies in front of it. But they were giving away stuff from Home Slice Pizza and things like that. And there was, in the Austin subreddit, there was this whole breakdown because the Soup Peddler, the place that you like to go to, they make soup. It's like a soup store.
Right, you go, there's all kinds of restaurants out there, right? This is a soup place. You go there, and what do you get? soup.
You get soup. And they had to stop doing it because their employees were being threatened. And I thought, oh my God, somebody did a political thing and was, threatening people for encouraging people to vote. Apparently what people were really upset about was the lines, because everyone was coming to get their free thing. I guess people were making the rounds. And also because people would just come back again and again, they started asking people for their I voted early stickers, which are now these badges of honor that people wear. And people were very upset and didn't want to give up their sticker.
Well, because that means they couldn't turn it in somewhere else as well. But
probably,
also,
or just because they wanted to show off that they voted early.
There are a couple of different ways that different businesses were sort of dealing with that. I think they were all figuring it out on the fly. I heard that some of the businesses started stamping the stickers so you could keep your sticker, or they printed their own I voted stickers with home slice pizza or something on it, so that you would turn in your sticker and they would give you their sticker so that it's not valid elsewhere. Basically, you get one freebie, guys.
But honestly, it's
one freebie.
They had to shut it down because the employees were feeling threatened. I mean, it's come on, it's free soup. It's free soup.
Well, it's worth fighting over.
And I wasn't there for it. Anecdotally reading it, people were like, well, they had to wait 40 minutes for it. It's maybe also a free cup of soup isn't worth 40 minutes of your time. You know what I mean? Especially when you consider it's we're trying to get people to go out and vote. It's funny how some people wait in line 40 minutes for a free cup of soup.
But won't wait 40 minutes to vote.
Yeah, but it's
Maybe if they offer a hot dog at the end.
What do you think was the lowest voter turnout, if you had to guess? It's in your lifetime.
I'm going to say... We're talking presidential. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say 40%. And I'm going to say, I don't know. In my lifetime, okay, the original George Bush?
No, you were, yeah. So it was 49%. And it was Clinton's reelection was 1996.
Interesting. Okay.
So, and that would have been when he was running against Bob Dole and Ross Perot, because we actually had three candidates. Imagine having three candidates at that time, and less than half the voting population turns out to vote at that point in time.
Man, yeah, that's. I wonder what the climate was like at that time, because obviously the media climate and the way we talk about things and the way we communicate and share information has changed so dramatically. In 1996, that's not something I was paying attention to. 1996, I'm
in high school.
I'm starting high school. I don't care about anything. All right. Absolutely nothing. I'm pretty sure at that point I was reading lots of books about dragons and stuff, and spending way too much time in the junior high school darkroom for yearbook club. Okay,
so to put
that was my entire life.
Put it in perspective. The popular vote, Bill Clinton received 49% of the popular vote of 49% of the people. So less than 25% of the people in America voted for the presidential winner that year.
Yeah, there's a weird thing though too with the U.S. where I kind of understand why a lot of people don't turn up, and that is that it seems like the American elections have been narrowed down to the swing states, right? If you're in California and you're a practicing conservative, why bother? Right, because you just assume the state is going to go blue. If you're in Texas, it's hard to muster up the motivation to go if you're voting blue because that you assume the state's going to go red. That's shifting here and there in various states, but all the elections focus so hard on these swing states that it feels like if you're not one of them, you're not actually electing anyone.
I thought about this recently. Okay, so we live in Texas. That's where we vote. That's our residence in America is in Texas. Because we're not citizens of the UK, we are American citizens who live abroad right now. In fact, our daughter, Evie, was born in Aberdeen. She's not a UK citizen either. She's an American citizen born abroad. She's not eligible for UK citizenship. So voting in Texas, going into the voting booth, if I vote for Kamala Harris, then what I'm doing, and I thought about this, then what I'm doing is really, it's a state that's very unlikely to turn blue. You'll see a lot of speculation that it could turn blue today, meaning that it'll go for the Democrats. I don't think that's likely to happen. It would be incredible. I would just be amazed if even they got rid of Ted Cruz, who is a universally disliked Republican senator in Texas. I would be shocked if that even happened in Texas. So if I go to the voting booth, vote for Kamala Harris, and I'm doing that in Texas goes red. Yes, my vote counts, and it counts towards the popular vote. But then I had to, I really think about what am I doing in that case? If the state goes red and my vote goes for the popular vote and Kamala Harris ends up losing to Trump because of the Electoral College, then I can show that the popular vote was higher for Harris. Am I just adding to the dissension in America and the rift in America? That's essentially what my vote feels like it would be going for at that point in time. Does that make sense?
It does make sense because, and this has come up quite a bit because, for example, people will say, well, Trump lost the popular vote in 2016 and yet won the Electoral College and was president. But that doesn't feel fair because the majority of the people didn't choose him, right? And so I do think it adds to the dissension. I don't think the Electoral College is doing anyone favors anymore. It's certainly not doing the overall process favors. I understand why people in less populated states want to protect it because they don't want their lifestyle and their choices to all be determined by, as they say, people in the cities. But what it does is it means that votes are not equal, right? You say if the idea is, for democracy, the idea is one person, one vote, right? And everyone has an equal say, the Electoral College knocks that out. That does not exist. So I think the best thing that could be done to fix that system is actually ditch the Electoral College and one person, one vote.
And even like going back to what I was saying about Clinton too, it's like, less than 25% of the people that could have voted, less than 25% of the people in America voted for Bill Clinton. He won the presidency. That's not to take away from every president who wins. Less than 50% of the country voted for that person, unless they somehow pull like a 90% or 80% popular vote in the election, in the general election, because so few people vote in the U.S. compared to other countries. And it's just so incredible to me, if hopefully you're in your car or now you're in line or on public transportation to go to vote. It's such an important thing that you're doing today, because if you look at it, if you can just, when these elections are decided by 3%, 2%, sometimes in some states, like 30 votes, what was Gore in 2000? It was a shatteringly low amount of votes that decided that election, which ultimately I think went to the Supreme Court to decide it. But if you can just get people out, you think about how much time people spend online, how much mental energy that people devote to politics and talking about political issues. If you can just get people to go out and spend a morning or half a morning. I spent 5 minutes to early vote. I spent far more time filling out my ballot than I did waiting in line or anything like that, because I went on the first day of early voting. And if you can just get people to go and push a button, think about that. You could just go and spend half a morning to just basically push a button and solve so many problems in your life. And I've been posting on my Instagram the early voting numbers because it's insane, the early voting. We now have, let me see exactly how many. Sorry, Mush. I wanted to lean towards my computer and get data, and Mush is sitting on my lap.
Mush is desperately trying to sit on both of our laps, and he's not having a great morning.
No, it's a poor guy. So there have been about 80 million mail-in and early in-person votes cast nationally. So what we call early voting or mail-in voting, or sometimes absentee in some states. 80 million votes have already been cast. And just if you break it down by age, up until last week, it was something like 76% of all the votes cast were cast by people 50 or older. 50 or older, 76%. And it's evened out a little bit. But right now, about 60% of the votes that have been cast by people 50 or older. 40-year-olds have cast 13% of the votes. They're being overtaken by people in their 30s. They're just above them at just over 13%. And then people in their 20s are 12% of the total votes that have been cast. And if you could just get, especially young people, I think, there's so much power to, if you could just get them to come out, and it wouldn't have to be a massive movement, I don't think, to get a lot of people to come out to really swing a lot of elections. And even in the non-presidential years, as the off years for elections, when it's still congressional elections, you can swing so much just by getting people to go out and vote, just by getting them to go out and vote.
Yeah, I mean, when almost half the country doesn't turn up to vote, it's the election is decided as much by who doesn't go as it is by those who actually do.
Yeah, and it's something people get beat over the head with. Like, you got to vote, you got to vote, you got to register, and it's like, it's always still shocking to me when people in their 20s and 30s, they go to vote, they're not registered, they don't know the process or anything like that. It's just ridiculous. And yes, there can be things people can sometimes educate themselves out of action, where they can tell you all about the Electoral College. They can tell you all things about like gerrymandering, which is the way they set up districts to affect voting. And yet they don't even express their simple right of going out and pushing that button to get it done. If we can just get people to vote, there could be a huge swing. I would love to see the two-party system in America just broken and shattered. I would love to see that.
I don't know how that happens.
I don't know how it happens anymore. I really don't know how it happens.
You made a joke to me. We were just having a conversation the other day about how this is such a stressful election window, and everyone's just been sort of at each other's throats this whole time. You're like, somehow it's going to get worse. Like, we're going to have to go and do a runoff election. That's the thing, though, is these elections, they basically are. It's like, technically you can have independent candidates, but practically speaking, it's a runoff, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, which of these two? Pick one.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm glad you're going out and voting. I'm just going to assume that you are. Thank you for going out and voting today.
Good job, you. Good job. And if you're elsewhere in the world, we'll keep you company while you, bite your nails and wait with us to see what happens.
Yeah, so why don't we talk about that for a second? So here's from AP News. Since you're not going to spend the whole day, hopefully, looking at election coverage, here is from 2020 when the different battleground states started to report and when they declared a winner. And so just so you can set people's expectations correctly for Election Day, some of these didn't happen until weeks after the election in 2020. Okay, so first up is Arizona. In 2020, the Associated Press first reported Arizona results at 10 o'clock Eastern Time on November 3rd and declared Biden the winner of Arizona. Arizona went blue last election at 3 in the morning on November 4th, so late that same evening. Georgia, in 2020, the AP first reported Georgia results at 7:20 Eastern Time on November 3rd and declared Biden the state's winner at 7:58 p.m. on November 19th, more than 2 weeks after Election Day.
I remember the last election, Georgia was very contentious. Didn't they recount like 3 times?
It was the story of last election. It's why people think about that there was a big gap between the election and the January 6th stuff. It was like because the election kept dragging out, right? And so there was all this opportunity to talk about the steal and things like that. Michigan results were reported at 8 o'clock November 3rd. Biden was declared the winner at 5 p.m. on November 4th. For Nevada in 2020, results first reported at 11:41 p.m. Eastern Time, November 3rd. And Biden was declared the winner at noon on November 7th, 4 days later. North Carolina in 2020, AP first reported results at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on November 3rd and declared Trump the winner at 3:49 p.m. on November 13th.
So if this is stressing you out, just this is so you can, like, everyone can start to like prepare yourself that everyone is voting. The polls will close this evening.
You're gonna hear a lot of speculation,
but it probably won't be settled for at least a week, maybe 2. Depends on how close it is.
Yeah,
depends on. I think it'd be a great stress relief for all of us if this could just be a huge sweep.
Yeah, well, you were pretty young. You were not yet, I don't think, or you were just at voting age for 2020.
Yeah, I would have, I think, I would have just hit it.
Yeah, and so do you remember how that election dragged on, too? That was Bush Jr. versus Gore.
I do remember that. And it was, I mean, at the time, I wasn't paying as close attention. I voted, but I didn't, spend much time beyond that thinking about it and then go, oh, my guy didn't win.
Wrapping up battleground results from 2020, though, real quickly. Pennsylvania was not declared until November 7th. And Wisconsin was declared the next day at November 4th. So even as we wake up tomorrow morning, Ash, I wouldn't expect that we're going to know who is going to be the next president of the United States.
What I would like is when these all are, everything's counted, everything's reported in, I want them to take the UK approach. This is something that we learned a lot about when 2 years ago when the UK went through 1,000 prime ministers in 1,000 days. But they went through quite a few prime ministers very, very quickly as the Tory party, the Conservative Party, kept changing leadership because it's done so differently here, where you don't elect the prime minister, you elect a party into power, and the leader of that party becomes the prime minister.
And the representation of parliament is based on the vote. So, if 10% of people vote for the Green Party, then you have 10% representation of the Green Party in Parliament.
Right, and they'll form coalitions, and there's a lot more room for more parties and different ideologies, and then they have to try to work together and form these coalitions and make compromises, as opposed to just these sort of like locked in stalemates that we're currently seeing in the U.S. with like the House and the Senate, and these like very narrow leads that mean that no one can get anything done. Also,
the all or nothing in America it's a very American thing, right? You're either with me or you're against me.
You're winning or you're losing.
Yeah, and
there is no tie. What is this, soccer?
I do like how it is in other countries. You know what I mean? Where it's like you get more representation of different parties across different, aspects of the culture within the country. You can have people like the Green Party. You even have like the far right is the far right. There is representation for those people, but it's represented by those people. It doesn't bleed into the larger part of American politics or overall national politics, I should say, to where, well, I have to vote for this person because, I don't agree with the fringe of this party, but at least it's better than the other guys, which is the conversation we keep having over and over and over again in American politics.
Because you feel like you just have a binary choice.
How many elections have you voted in, Ashley, where it's like you got to vote for this person because if you don't, everything's going to fall apart?
I feel like that's all of them.
It's everything.
That's
now.
all of them. It's like
we got to stop pretending like that's a new conversation.
Like if you don't vote for this guy, the apocalypse is going to happen.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and you'll be responsible for it and everything like that.
Yeah, but what I do like, the other thing about this UK thing is when they get like a new party in, when they so Labour just took over Parliament in the UK, and the Tory guy was out. Like he was like, all right, the elections, like
you're fascinated by this.
I love this. I love it so much that they just like, they're like, all right, put your shit in boxes and get out. The new guy's got to move in. And it wasn't drawn out for months and months and months. It was like, okay, we're done. We're moving on. Let's go.
Can you imagine though, honestly, the stress of being someone running a campaign for sometimes a year or 2 years, or in this case, it seems like fucking 4 years. You're running all that, and it all comes down to one day, and then you also have the stress of packing at the same time.
I think they have people for that.
I know. You know what I mean, though? It's
they call in the like 2 guys, 1 truck, and then like they're going to take care of everything.
No, I got to fucking move.
Make sure you pack that up with some padding, okay?
I knew I should have cleaned out the pantry last year. God damn it.
Everything's past its best by date.
When the fuck did we buy pumpkin pie mix? What is this?
It's been there since what, George Washington? Oh, you know what, though? Here's a fun thing that people can do while they're waiting in line. I'm going to look this up, but I saw there is an auction happening, Bernie, for presidential, like, memorabilia, including a lock of Washington's hair. So if you want to, like, buy some presidential hair, now's your time.
How do they have wasn't Washington, was it a powdered wig? Did he have?
I think the powdered wigs were more like his going out hat. Underneath there had to be some hair somewhere, right?
They have Washington's hair.
I like to think it's chest hair.
That's a real thing? They have his hair?
Yeah. I think it's from a locket.
That's fucking creepy, dude.
No, people used to keep like, little bits of hair in lockets all the time.
Hey, listen, if anybody out there is a necromancer, like if you've done a big build and you put all your points into necromancy, we got a job for you.
Bring him back and ask him how he feels about this whole thing.
Oh my God, can you imagine? Can you imagine the whole, like, the guy who, like, put off being a king, like, stepped away from that and said, we don't need to be a king, we don't need that, and then became president? I wonder, too, if, like, probably not the best day to ask, but I just wonder, do we need a president? Is that a thing? Was it an interim thing that we had to have, and then we don't really need it anymore?
I mean, I feel like it makes sense to have, like, one person who's, like, the buck stops here, right? You have to have the guy who gives the speech when the aliens invade, right? You got to have that guy.
I feel like the president's now, like, play dates with other countries. We got to send them the president.
Or like, the senators are fighting over the wood blocks in the playroom, and you have to have the adult in the room to go like, hey, guys.
Yeah. Last couple of years. was like, hey, can you just share a little bit? We're getting a lot of negative reports from the other country's parents. My God. But yeah, it's just I don't want to harp too much on it, but if we could just like, I just have this like utopian vision of like Gen Z or the millennials like saying, hey, what if we all just get together? Fuck everybody else. We're all just going to vote and we're going to push things in a certain direction. Like even, you could even solve the two-party thing we're talking about. You know what I mean? Like just start their own party, and they all vote for that. It would turn everything over in a day. You know what I mean? In a morning, you could overturn everything. Solve most of your problems with the push of a button.
You guys, you can do it.
Too idealistic, I know.
You can do. No, you can. Well, I mean, yeah, but you could do this. You can do this.
Yeah. But you got to start. You got to start so soon, because if you do it like the year of an election, then you're going through that upstream current of everyone saying, no, stop talking about other parties. Stop talking about new things. You got to do this or we're all going to die,
So start today. Get working.
And I shouldn't say that because that sounds like particularly the left in particular, but the right's the same way. It's like toe the line, do this. If you don't do this, then our way of life will be destroyed and our country will be overrun, and this country will continue to fail and everything. You get it everywhere. Everyone gets it all the time.
Yeah, everyone's being completely inundated with it.
And I can't help but feel like that's the thing, that we're all subjected to, is this constant messaging from all the media that we consume, telling us constantly, it's like, you gotta hold the line here. You gotta hold the line here. And it's like, I can't help but feel that somebody's making that line. Like somebody's drawing that line, and it's not the people that are voting, I don't feel like.
No, I would agree. I feel like the majority of the people are just chill people. Right?
I like to think so.
Getting by, the inducing of panic is because that's really good for clicks.
And this is not to minimize the wackadoos that are out there. There's some fucking lunatics out there. There are some legitimate fucking crazy, weird, fringe lunatics. They do exist. But if we don't embrace the people that are just normal, want a good life, want things for their family, want a measure of security, whether that means security for their current way of life and the world that they grew up in, and also the security to send their kids to school and feel safe about that. You know what I mean? It means a lot of different things. And every time anyone hears any kind of thing that's a political talking point, you can almost see like people, the hair on the back of their neck go up, like mush when I do the morning somewhere intro. You can see it like
he gets so stiff.
If you don't use the right word or you don't emphasize the right syllable, people are like you sound like you're different than me. You know what I mean? It's like you can just watch people start to get rankled about it. And God, I would just love, totally idealistic, if somebody could just start a movement where they just like turn the whole thing on its ear. Turn the whole thing.
Here's a question for you: who's your favorite fake president? Like media president? I know that one of the very popular ones has always been President Bartlett from the West Wing.
Oh, I was going to say George W. My favorite one.
Come on now.
Sorry. It's a political day.
I was always a big fan of Dave. That was the Kevin Kline movie where he is like an impersonator for the president, and then they sort of bring him in to be the presidential decoy, and then the president has a stroke or something because it turns out he's very immoral, and so they are trying to use poor Dave here as like their ongoing decoy until they can figure out what to do. And then he decides he's not going to go with the flow anymore and he's going to do what's right because he believes in it. I loved that movie.
I don't have a favorite fake president.
What about the American president? Who was that one? That was Annette Bening and Michael Douglas.
Yeah. No, I don't have a favorite like fake president. I really don't.
Next up, Mush for president. He's an American citizen.
Yeah, he's had a long night out. I hope he's okay.
Yeah, Mush accidentally got...
Let's get off of politics. We can talk about...
Yeah, Mush accidentally got stuck outside the house last night. We think that we were getting groceries in the house, and we think he snuck out, and we didn't realize it until this morning. He was at the window meowing to be let in.
That's
Poor
okay.
little buddy.
He spends a lot of nights out. He's a cat.
He's sleeping with the chickens.
In fact, if we don't let him out, then he bitches at us constantly and punishes us by scratching on our bed and stuff like that.
Right, and then the nights he does come out, he comes in and barfs up a mouse.
I also want to say the plan today, it's going to be a long podcast, which is going to throw off our schedule, but that's okay. We'll work it out. the plan for today is also, since we're going to be putting out this for everybody, we want to do something special for the patrons as well. So be putting up the episode that I recorded with Jeff Ramsey.
The lost episode.
It was a billion years ago. So the problem with it was I recorded with Jeff, and it was long, so it took me a while to edit it. I think we talked for like an hour 30. It's down to like an hour 10 at this point. So this is a lot of podcasts to listen to today. The problem was we recorded it before Rooster Teeth, it was announced, was shutting down. And then I hadn't released it by the time that announcement was made. So suddenly it was the two of us sitting down and talking for an hour and not mentioning that at all.
Right. So
Yeah.
it was going to feel like oddly out of time or something like that. And then also you had Jeff and his group launched their regulation Patreon. And so you didn't want to like crowd in on that because they were getting established.
Correct.
And so you wanted to hold off on that. And then it felt like now we've gone too long. It's that sort of like awkward. It fell in an awkward hole.
But it also felt weird not to release it, just to be sitting on this thing about it.
Right.
Yeah,
so today is the day.
Yeah. So and when you listen to it, there'll be a ton of stuff in it that's dated. There's a point in there where we talk about Mr. Beast for a while, and it's that's gonna feel strange looking back. But then also he's not talking about regulation at all. He's talking about the Fuckface podcast,
Right,
which they had under Rooster Teeth.
Because they hadn't launched
It's the same
regulation
podcast,
yet.
but different name.
Yeah, so you'll be able to listen to that, and we're going to release that for all paid patrons, so tiers 1 and 2.
Okay, so we're gonna do it for tiers 1 and 2.
Yes.
So there you go. So that'll be available as well today. That's the plan, at least. Let's see what happens.
Best laid plans, right?
Well, what else is going on in the world today? You want to talk about some fun stuff? I know you love to talk about your video games.
I do. So we're at the end of an era, Bernie. Several months ago, I believe it was 7 months ago, the Nintendo shut down the Nintendo network for 3DS. So the 3DS went offline 7 months ago.
Oh, tell me about it. I was lamenting that hardcore.
Except there was one player who has kept it up this entire time. 7 months now we're at. A player managed to stay online in Mario Kart 7.
Really?
For 3DS.
How long?
7 months. They've been on, and they
Do you remember
game,
they did this for Halo 2 as well? Sorry, go ahead and I'll interject in a moment.
it finally crashed, booted them out of the game, and now the Nintendo network for 3DS is officially no more.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the phenomenon there? That if you stay online, they just won't take the servers off until the last player has disconnected?
Yeah, that's how it works a lot of times. And on the one hand, it seems to be like, I don't know, almost like like warriors saluting one another, right? Is like the companies do seem to like keep it online, like almost.
It's free marketing, honestly.
It is free marketing, except we didn't hear about it for 7 months. So they basically paid 7 months for this server, for this final player until he's offline, and they're like, oh, thank God for that, and we hear about it the one time 7 months later.
Yeah, it's some department that has to keep somebody employed, like watching for this guy to disconnect, and they have to pay the server bill until this guy finishes playing Mario Kart 7.
Yeah, but
it's a heartwarming story until you realize some guy lost his bonus for that quarter. Because his department was over budget for this one dude.
Because of this server that was like this one server still running in the closet. It's like the infinite server that like do not turn this off.
I
love
the idea of the employee getting online and racing against him to try to force him off, like griefing him constantly for 3 months. So years ago, when Microsoft was shutting down the Xbox servers for the original Xbox multiplayer, Xbox Live. They were shutting down those servers in particular. Halo 2 was part of that. And a group of players got in and realized if they continued to play Halo 2, they wouldn't take the servers offline. And that was the thing people were watching. I think they went for something like 3.5 weeks. And we can link in the link dump links to articles where they interviewed these guys and everything else. And yeah, they just stuck with it and played for 3.5 weeks straight. They were playing Halo 2.
Yeah, and that's happened for a couple of different games, I think. But I do remember the Halo one. That was like, it was like this big moment and everyone's watching as slowly these players fall offline. They crash and they can't get back in, and or they get disconnected or whatever it is. And then you just whittle it down, right? It's like a Hunger Games.
Yeah, yeah.
Where you're like the last man standing, and then when they fall, you're like, oh, the hero has fallen. But it's this almost this really fun sort of community like this final celebration of a game going offline. And it's like, it's weird because it's sad and it's bittersweet because the game is going away, but it's this final celebration. It's the wake, if you will.
Yeah, it's like what Georgia did with the 2020 election. keep going, everybody. Keep going.
We just want to keep it going.
Yeah, this is too much fun. We don't want to let it go. Jesus Christ. In more recent events, this happened with Concord, which was the Sony game that the studio sadly was just recently shut down, but people were racing the server shutdowns to try to get all of their trophies in that game, to get what was it, you said something like 70 players
platinum,
got a platinum trophy?
I think it ended up being 69 players were able to get the platinum trophy, and no one else will be able to get that trophy because now the game was then shut down, and so you can't play the bits of the game that you need to be able to get that platinum. And now with the studio shut down, it's unlikely that they will bring that game back in another way. So that number may never go higher than 69.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I saw probably a tweet or an article or quote or something. I read online someone talking about the studio that makes Concord. It's not called Concord Studios.
It's a Firewalk, I want to say.
That sounds right. Talking about shutting it down. And they just said it's always a huge mistake to just shut down a studio that actually delivered a game because there's so much that was learned from that. And I agree with that. It's like, just because, especially in entertainment, somebody made a project that fell flat, that's not a reason to shut it down. There's so much that you're just walks out the door with all of those people. You already paid for the lesson. You know what I mean? And if you're a company like Sony, find a way to keep that going, and turn it into something better, Yeah, probably have to do some layoffs, or something like that. But especially in any project, at least that I've worked on, going all the way back to group projects in school, 25% of the people do an incredible amount of the work in any project I've ever been involved with. Sometimes it's like voter turnout. Sometimes you get up to like 50, and that's incredible.
You won the lottery on that one.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? It's like, have you had that similar experience, where it's like, it seems like there's a core group of people that really get a whole lot of shit done. And, even just taking that group and trimming it way down and then growing it back up from that can be hugely successful.
Yeah, and I like what you're saying there too about like you already paid for the lesson, and the next project that might pay off, right? That said, these game projects are insanely expensive. When you're talking, investments in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and you get no real payoff for that investment, the idea of investing another hundreds of millions of dollars for the next thing, that can be very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Not to say that someone like Sony isn't in a position to take that risk, because they're one of the few that really are in that position. They can cushion that couple $100 million, no problem. But it is hard for a lot of companies to float that future investment on the hope that the right lessons were learned.
Right. I mean, it becomes much easier to just like go with the winners. And I get that process too. That makes sense. You know what I mean? It makes sense of like, hey, this team made this game that's doing incredibly well. Give them the resources because they know how to get it done,
Right.
And sure, they can hire some of the people from the other studio. Makes sense. Totally makes sense.
And maybe you end up in a position where you identify those that key 25% that was really carrying the group project and try to find places for them. But sometimes you just can't.
Video game companies and studios are weird too. They occupy like a really specific space because they're kind of like tech companies, but they're not. And they're kind of like an entertainment studio, but they're not. The way they're structured as businesses. Like if you look at people making movies, they make a movie, and then when the movie's over, everyone goes off and does something different.
Right. They don't stay together as a studio to make the next movie.
Right. Marvel's not like a bunch of employees. When you see the credits rolling, the 100 billion people that worked on the latest Marvel movie, you're not going to see the same names from movie to movie. You might see some of them, the top line people they called. But, it's not like there's Marvel employees, like the Marvel Visual Effects Studios. That's farmed out everywhere across the world. Yes, there are key people. Yes, there are key teams. But for the lion's share, it's people who come on for a project and then go off and do something else. Whereas video game studios, they tend to be more employees. You work for Bungie. You work for Firewalk, until you don't.
I wonder what it would be like if the video game industry was like the movie industry, where you make your game and then you are done, and then you go and look for the next game that you want to work on, or they're like someone's spinning up a new game project, and I'm going to join that team.
Yeah,
And, it'd be a very different looking industry if that were the case.
Yeah, or they do it when they do it. It looks like layoffs, right? You know what I mean? Whereas, you ever heard about a layoff from a movie project? Like Hunger Games laid off 50 people today. It's that's not the way that's reported.
It's called wrapped.
Right. Project's over.
It wrapped, and now we all move on. We're done.
It's just different models. You know what I mean? It's different models. But it also goes to show why unions and everything are so strong in the traditional entertainment industry. Why there's such a huge union presence. Because, you do a couple projects like that, and you can quickly see how it's like people are scrambling for work.
Right. You're not building towards your 30-year retirement with a single company in that industry.
Yeah. And can you imagine if you like a movie project when there's scale for what people are paid for certain things, Can you imagine if you had to hire up for every project, hire and, negotiate salaries for each individual person as though you're doing a startup every single time? You do that, but it's nice to have a baseline from which to start with the union rules and things like that. It's very nice to have that.
Right. You start off with the outline all done, and then you fill in the details.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know where the conversation starts at least.
Yeah, but it's also very different from a tech company where they'll maybe make, let's say you have your Photoshop team, right? And you make Photoshop, and then you update Photoshop until the end of days. A lot of times you'll make a game. Although I guess that's changing now. There are teams like the Fortnite team lives on Fortnite, right? And they're making updates to Fortnite, and they're doing all this forever. Now we have a lot of those live service games that are a lot more almost like traditional software.
Someone said, by the way, we were talking about this with the patrons, that there's a way to get a custom code for a custom server on Fortnite. If you have enough people where you can get together to do that, which we do. We could do just custom matches on Fortnite. Maybe that's something we can request and ask.
Yeah, I'm sure we can find someone to ask about that.
We can just pick up the phone and call Epic and go,
yeah, just be like, excuse me, Mr.
Hey, y'all.
Mr. Epic, I would like a key.
Mr. Sweeney. Yeah.
Could you stop buying up forests and just get me a custom key, please?
We want a mush skin. Is that possible? Can we get that?
I would
Creator
absolutely
codes?
go in for a mush skin.
But I do like when video games companies support, like you were talking about Nintendo supporting this person who was playing Mario Kart 7 for 7 months or whatever it was. Did you read recently that the No Man's Sky dev, that they went in and repaired the save file for somebody who had 600 hours in the game? And they said, look, if someone's going to spend 600 hours in our game, send us your save file. We will fix your save file for you.
Yeah, I did see that.
That's pretty cool.
I thought that was really, really cool that they said, when a player's put that much into our game, it deserves the engineering fix, basically. So they went in, and it's like, can you imagine a service where you send in your save and they doctor it?
I never...
I'd be like, could you do that, but give me a lot more money?
I never... Yeah, exactly. I lost 80,000 V-Bucks somehow. Don't go looking for it. There was a video on TikTok where I could go to an ATM and get a bunch of V-Bucks.
So why is my V-Bucks negative? Why is that? How did that happen?
I talked about with Gavin, I talked about how I didn't play GTA 5 and I've never really played it. Do you know one of the reasons why I never played GTA 5 online? Just never did it? Because I picked it up too late. I was waiting for it to get itself established. And there was a money glitch where people could get a shitload of money in GTA 5. And I knew about the glitch and I knew it was out there. And then they patched it, but they didn't take away the money from the people who did the glitch.
I think they did a little bit, but it ended up in a sort of funny area where it's like Hollywood accounting. Like, where did this money come from? Which money is this money? Which money goes in this pool? Was this spent here? How did
money laundering?
Yeah. It was the GTA money laundering. They had trouble, I think, enforcing it, so it was a bit spotty. They tried to take away some, but people were getting millions and millions of dollars and could buy everything in the game, and then that threw the economy way, way off for everyone else.
And then I came in and I was like, well, I have $5, and the guy next to me has $300 million or whatever.
Because he started 2 days earlier,
right? Or just was doing it. It went on for a while. If I recall.
Bernie,
yeah,
take your lumps.
Take my lumps. Not taking those lumps, because then I got to go down to GameStop and buy By the way,
take you a lump sum.
did you notice my pause there when I said GameStop?
Yes, I did.
All these decades later, when I go to say GameStop, I have to think, am I saying GameSpot or GameStop? I have to do that every time I say either one of those goddamn names. It's crazy.
It's just at this point, it's like built in to your brain that you have to you second think it, and then you have to triple think it, and then you have to like go back through the process of how one spells the thing and what does it mean, and then you can get your answer every single time. Been there, done that.
God, I also love too. When I say GameSpot, which was does it still exist?
Yes.
Okay, it's like a IGN style website. It used to be, I'd say, at the level of IGN, right? And I feel like GameSpot fell off a little bit because of the Jeff Gerstmann controversy, where they wanted him to write a positive review for a game called Kane and Lynch. There was pressure put upon him because Kane and Lynch was doing a big advertising campaign with GameSpot. And if you follow Rooster Teeth, you know the connection between some of our coworkers and that controversy. But I feel like GameSpot though fell off a little bit because of that. But I really feel like they got hurt by the growth of all the like Kotaku, Polygon, all the blogs that came out. I think it put a dent in GameSpot the way it didn't put a dent in IGN, or IGN was able to weather it a little bit better.
Yeah, I feel like for what I saw, and please keep in mind that I'm biased because I worked for IGN for a while. That IGN was solidly in that number one space. GameSpot was in the number two space, but then you had all these other ones around. You had the Kotakus, you had The Verge, the Polygon, all these ones really coming in and. So like nipping at the heels, right? And building their own audiences, but those audiences didn't necessarily have time to keep up with everyone, so they picked their one, and that did weather away at the big ones at IGN, at GameSpot, but it did feel like GameSpot got it worse.
Yeah.
It does. I think IGN was fortunate or forward thinking in that they had diversified by that point. So they did talk about games, but then they also had to help them out, like their movie and TV coverage and their pop culture stuff and all that as well to help bolster them while gaming was spreading out a little bit more.
Yeah. And the thing I was laughing about was when we were away for a month to do The Amazing Race, that was when Fallout 4 came out, right?
Yeah, that was, yeah. We were completely offline during The Amazing Race and had no idea anything that was happening. We came back day one and I went, what the fuck happened? It was like, you ever see that, the meme of
Donald Glover
coming back in and everything's on fire? That's what that felt like.
Yeah, that felt like that for a while. But this one in particular was the patch crew was doing a Fallout kind of review or like a launch thing about it, and they were talking about a negative review that was given by a reviewer. I have to think that they didn't know who they were talking about, and they were talking about Jeff Gerstmann saying Fallout 4 was a disappointment. And I think they were like insinuating that he was a shill and stuff, which is like, you can't do that with that guy.
I was like, you guys, what have you done? Like, of all the people, like, I get he could be kind of a grumpy curmudgeon, but that's an integrity that you can't challenge. The dude walked away from his job.
Yeah, you don't get higher than that. Like money where your mouth is, walked away from your job. And GameSpot has produced some really, really cool people. Gerstmann and then Giant Bomb and everything they've done there. But also, do you remember who else came out of GameSpot?
Who came out of GameSpot?
Greg Kasavin came out of GameSpot.
Oh, that's right. And he's gone on to do amazing things.
Moved into game dev.
Yeah.
Bastion.
I loved Bastion. Transistor. What was the one that came after that?
Come on. It's a big one. Hades.
Oh, right. That was them.
Yeah, that was them.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I like when people are able to pivot. Talked previously about Mystery Guitar Man and him pivoting into traditional like narrative films and things like that. I love when people are able to do that. I think that's really, really cool. And he's had an enormous amount of success in video game development after GameSpot.
And I feel like that's a space of games that I really enjoy where they come out and games like Hades do these amazing breakouts, but even the ones that don't necessarily break out, like Transistor, are so unique and so beautiful and doing their own thing, and they can succeed and thrive in a world where, where everyone's talking about the newest Call of Duty, and these huge tent poles, that there's space for these beautiful games like all the ones that Supergiant works on. They're so great.
Do you remember what are some other ones you read? Because I'm talking before the blogs, before the Kotaku, Polygon era. Do you remember GameSpy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, IGN bought GameSpy, also 1UP.
Oh really? Yeah. Geez. People who worked at 1UP, if I may, now that we've got a little bit of distance, they were a little bit insufferable. Like they would talk about 1UP like it was the greatest thing in the world and it will never be recreated. It's like, then why wasn't it successful? Like, what happened?
Look, I'm biased. I cannot criticize. When I was with Frag Dolls, we did a lot of stuff with 1UP. I went on like snowboard trips with a lot of those guys. So I'm not in a I'm not in a neutral space to talk about that.
So do you think it was amazing and 1UP was the best thing ever?
Absolutely. Do you know how many game nights we did with them? Who do you think put them on the map?
What's IGN doing with that name, 1UP? What are they doing with it?
They've retired it.
The fuck out of here.
Yeah,
What
I know.
a great name.
I know. It's a fantastic name. I'm sure they still own it. Maybe there are plans one day to do something with it, but I think they had so many properties for a while and they were like, but we're all kind of doing the same thing. Why don't we just all do the same thing together? Why do we need these other properties?
See, what they needed was that Mario Kart guy on the website hitting F5 over and over again so they couldn't turn it off because then they'd have to do it.
Forever.
That's the law, apparently. If somebody's doing it, you can't stop it. You got to keep it going.
Yeah, as long as there's like one person reloading the page, you can't shut it down.
And I think we're making a joke, but going back to the beginning of the podcast, the election day stuff, I think that there's a lot of precincts where if there is someone in line, they have to stay open.
I've heard a lot about that. Like if you're in line by a certain time, then the polls will stay open until you voted.
It is one of the most frustrating things in America, though, is like, what state, city, county, and district are you in? And then we'll try to find out your specific rules for your specific thing.
All right. Well, I hope that everyone is doing well, waiting in line. Hopefully you've gotten through the line by this point. If not, I would encourage you to check out, if you are on our Patreon, the chat with Jeff, as well as our friends at Stinky Dragon, at Regulation, the content that they're putting out today. And let's get everyone voted and through the polls.
Yeah, Barb told me today that they are going to be releasing not an episode of Stinky Dragon. They are going to do a bonus podcast of their pop culture show. That was their plan when I talked to her last. So go listen to that. If you need some drive time coming back from the polls, if you're just getting to the polls and you need something to carry you through the line, then give that a listen. If you're a member of our Patreon, go listen to the Jeff episode. It's like a little time capsule from 6 months ago. Maybe longer at this point. All right. Thank you very much for going out and voting. It is really important that you've done that. It's important that you express yourself and push that little button to hopefully change your life for the better.
And we will all see you back here tomorrow. I'd also like to say a quick thank you to our sponsors for today's episode, Abdullah H. and Tiberius DS. Maybe he's 3DS now. All right. Thank you both for sponsoring this episode of our show at patreon.com/morningsomewhere.
All right. Well, that does it for us today, November 5th, 2024. We will be back to talk to you tomorrow. We hope you will be here as well.
Bye, everybody.